Hello, everyone. Jim Coyle with Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Thank you, as always, for listening to our content. But for more in-depth coverage on the Indiana Hoosiers football, basketball, and recruiting news, go to thehoosier.com on 3. Now with On 3 and great national writers like Ari Wasserman, Andy Staples, and Steve Wiltfong for football, Pete Nakos, J.B. Shaw, and Joe Tipton's constantly breaking stories on the basketball side. And the local coverage from Alec Lasley, Kyler Staley, and Zach Browning. You can catch something new every day at thehoosier.com. Go there. Sign up today.
Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by the Hard Truth Distilling Company in Brown County, Indiana.
So for the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world.
Touchdown, Indy. Woo! IU, America. They got a football team now.
It's pretty simple. I win. Google me.
You know that I'm the cream of the crop.
Oh. Now, from the Hard Truth Studios, here's Jim Coyle.
Welcome back to the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios on this Friday. And that means two things. One, your week is over, baby, and it is time for the weekend and a visit from the shot Dr. Todd Leary of myjumpshot.com. Make sure you're going there. If you know a kid, have kids, have seen a kid. Maybe you saw one running down the street, made him want to do something nice for him. Great birthday present. Help them improve their fundamentals, but just as an athlete all the way around, their mental attitude. Todd Leary, how are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you this morning? Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir. We're getting her done. I was getting ready to play around with... Oh.
I forgot my earbuds, so I got to go with the normal mic today.
Into the studio.
How'd that sound?
That sounded pretty cool. You sounded tough.
Man, it's been a busy week for Darian DeVries and staff as Indiana basketball has added a lot of pieces to their roster. Two commitments in the last day.
I thought that with the portal closing, because didn't the portal close on Tuesday?
Well, it closes as far as putting your name in. But once you're in until school starts.
So they can keep signing. They can keep signing guys as long as they want. There's
yeah.
From here on out.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's we knew, or I mean, a lot of teams are in this position, but we knew they were going to be filling some pieces, and you know, right now, I think that we have to just trust the staff. I know last year we, as fans, got super excited in the offseason with some of the big name acquisitions, and I think this year there'll be less big names, but I think there'll probably be more production to come out of those names. So, you know, we just all have to kind of sit back. This is an interesting offseason in the fact that not only are we getting new players, we're not exactly sure what style Coach DeVries is going to have in Indiana. So there's just...
I think we're getting a pretty good idea of it, and the funny thing is, Fred, where did that stupid comment go? Fred was suggesting, is this going to be the hurrying Hoosiers? And I have had someone make that comment a couple of times to me.
I mean, you know, it's really hard to say. Like, that's not been the MO of Coach DeVries in some of the places he's been. But, you know, when you put a bunch of shooters on the floor, it just makes everything easier. It makes the game look better and more fluid, makes the offense look better. And boy, right now, it sure appears they're putting a bunch of pieces together that are different than what this team's been built like, you know, for the past 15 years or so. And that they're going to have guys that can knock shots down pretty much all over the court.
They're definitely going to get. And yesterday, the kid that signed yesterday, Nick Dorn, listed as a guard, but he's 6'7", so he's not really. He's a 2-3, whatever you want to call him. And I think that's. You're going to see a lot of guys that can play the 2, the 3, or the 3 and the 4. He's going to have guys that mix in there. There's going to be a hell of a lot more shooting involved, and they pick up the guy from Florida yesterday also, but he's known as a rebounder, a defender. Sam Alexis, coming off a national champion Florida team, very high rebounding rate. So they're going to be putting the ball up in the air.
Yeah, they are. And you know, the style appears to be one that I think we'd be excited about. You know, I know last year I spent a lot of time over the summer complaining that I thought we had a team built that was going to play too slow. And that's not the case for this team. And you're right. Like, they've got a lot of interchangeable parts. Like, this team is very deep in that 2-3-4 position. And I know it's positionless basketball now, but in that 2-3-4 range and guys that can play there, this is a deep team, deep roster already. Now, it's not deep like in maybe some past years where you thought there was 5-star recruits in those positions, but I think we've all hopefully come to the conclusion that the stars don't really matter. Like, when the guys
How did that work? How did that work out?
Yeah, when they play well together, you can throw the stars out the window. And you know, this team, and I think teams from Indiana's successful past and hopefully moving forward are teams that are built that are, you know, the sum is greater at the whole. And these guys are going to play well together. I think Coach DeVries is going to build that locker room. I know I keep saying this repeatedly on the show every week, but I think the importance of the locker room being good guys is as important as anything. And I'm glad that that's a factor for Coach DeVries and how he's building his roster.
Yeah, and I think the difference here is he's going to have to make sure that these guys are also very sound and good defensively. But Sam Alexis, the kid that is going to come in from Florida, like I mentioned, didn't play a ton. He was a reserve for the national champions, but he was an active player, and his per 40 minutes numbers are pretty high. As a matter of fact, his per 40 minutes rebounding rate is off the chain at 14.5%. And the highest, Trace Jackson Davis as a senior, was 10. If that puts it some in perspective for you.
Yeah, but those per 40-minute numbers are silly. Like, a lot of times those don't make any sense, especially if you get a guy that comes in.
Hey, I'm trying to jazz it up. Here.
I like it. I'm just being a realist. In the summertime, in off season, we tend to get overly excited and put numbers on guys as to what you can expect out of them. And hey, it's all going to matter with the fit. It's hard to say what your per 40-minute numbers are going to be. We don't know how fast this team's going to play. He may average more than that. They may fly up and down the court. They also may slow it down quite a bit. So, you know, the per 40-minute numbers are just fun for us to talk about. But, yeah, adding pieces that you've got to have those rebounders. I said that on your show last week. You know, somebody's going to have to rebound the ball. And I do think that Tucker DeVries and Trent Sicily, those guys will be big rebounding factors. You know, those guys rebound above their height and you know, abilities a lot of times, and because of their hustle and how hard they play. And that's what Indiana fans, and especially myself, have been hoping to see, and looking at guys that just play their tails off and play hard, and the production will happen. He's got talented enough players. The production is there. They just got to get to playing hard and playing well together, and this will be a fun team to watch.
And, you know, I'm sure fans are thinking, well, they're not bringing any names, quote unquote names in, not any and yada yada. And I'm like, how many names did Kirk Cignetti bring in, and how did that work out? I know this is a different sport, but the point is he brought in the guys that he wanted, that he thought fit into the system and what he was trying to do. And I'm pretty certain that this is exactly what Darian DeVries is doing. He knows what he wants to do, how he wants to run his offense, how he wants the defense to play. And he knows that the type of players that he wants to try to fit into that and that's what he's going after.
Yeah, I mean, watching the NFL draft last night, you kind of get, there's a sense to the same, I know it's a different sport, and I know it's the pros versus college, but I mean, it's kind of dealing with the same thing. I mean, do you draft the best player available, or do you take a guy that fits the position you need to fill the most? And, I think last year, look, Omar Ballo was an outstanding player, big name. He's going to make your team better. And it was one of those circumstances. I think Indiana was in a position last year that they were trying to sign the most talent possible and then try to make it work and fit. And I think Kansas is another example of doing the same thing. And those two examples did not work out. And they spent a lot of money, and they tried to put a bunch of talent together. I know Omar Ballo and AJ Storr last year were probably the two biggest names in the whole portal. Omar's season was decent and fine, not super productive. They didn't make the NCAA tournament, so not successful. And AJ Storr, they made the NCAA tournament, but he was almost a non-factor for that Kansas team. And so the big name doesn't mean a whole lot. I like the way that they're building the roster and putting the pieces together. I said it when they hired Coach DeVries and that we knew they were going to have to build a roster. I hope he signs a bunch of dudes we've never heard of, because that means they've done their research and they found the pieces that are going to fit. And I'm not going to say we've never heard of most of these guys, but I think the pieces are the ones that Coach DeVries wants to add, and that is exciting for me.
And I agree 1,000%. Rick says, I think Alexis is a big pickup. He has the experience of what it takes to be a champion, coming off of defending champion Florida's team. But not only that, I talk about this Florida team a lot, and I said, how many of those guys had you ever heard of before the season? Yep. I guarantee you the average fan had not heard of any of those guys, right. And they went out and won a national championship. And they did it by playing the style of play they needed to play together and doing the things they needed to do. That is what I see is more of a value that he brings. Although being on a championship team always helps. You go through a lot of different battles, but he knows what it's like to be on a team that has been comprised of guys that were not all 5 stars. We're not all NBA first round projected draft picks and still succeed and win.
Yeah, and the guys that are just like exactly what you said, the guys that were on that Florida team, when some of them were freshmen, they were not the lead guy on their team. They were not the best player on their team. They weren't the brand marquee name like they became this year running through the tournament. And so having a guy that's been through the battle, no matter how much he played or did not play, having that experience and be able to bring that experience and talk about it with other guys and, let everybody know how much fun it is to get to go play in the Sweet 16 and the Elite 8 and the Final Four. What all is entailed with that. There's nobody on Indiana's roster last year that could go through and tell them what it's like to play in the Final Four. And yeah, it does add a little motivation. And it, when you're able to talk about how cool these things were and the experiences, every year, no matter what sport it is, when it gets to the playoff time, you hear announcers and analysts start talking about how much playoff experience, these teams have. And whether, that kid played a ton or didn't, he went through the experience, which can only help when you're coming into this locker room to be able to spread that around to the other guys and let everybody know how cool it was. So just that experience alone is a big value bringing that in.
Yeah, for certain. And I think that we're starting to get a pretty good understanding of what this team is going to look like. Now, what are your thoughts on with what he has put together so far? He's looking at in a bigger guy. They do have the Reed guy that's 6'10", which, I think unless you find a 7-footer that is a mobile 7-footer, this is not going to be a team. I said this yesterday or the day before. You're not going to see an Umar Ballo on this team.
Right.
There's not going to be somebody who is tied to the basket that can't move. So, I mean, unless there's a Danny Wolf out there, which, boy, wouldn't everybody love to have 2 or 3 of those in their pocket? But that's the only big I would kind of think that they would want to go after.
Well, and I think that they're going to look at a team where they've got guys that play bigger than what they are. And Trent Sicily at 6'7" or 8, like he rebounds at a bigger guy than that. You look at Danny Wolf, you use him as an example, and he's a great example because he's not a high-flying rebounder. Now he's 7 feet tall, kind of slow, but he's good with the ball, and he's fundamentally sound, and he plays hard, and he's good at positioning. And when you get a 6'8" guy that plays bigger than what he is, I think Tucker DeVries plays bigger than what he is. I mean, he's a stat stuffer. He picks up rebounds and assists. I think Trent Sicily will do the same thing. I think a lot of these other guys they bring in, the kid that's from DePaul that had played for DeVries at Drake before. I mean, he rebounds for better than someone his size. And so, I think you're right. I don't think they're even looking for someone to plug the middle. I think they're looking for guys that can produce bigger than what they are. And if a guy's 6'10", that's awesome. You can compete with anybody at that size. But I think a lot of the 6'6" to 6'9" guys that will be on this roster will play bigger than what the average 6'6" or 7" guy plays. And I know DeVries and Sicily both fall into that category. They're gonna rebound bigger than, if they're playing 2 or 3 guard, they're going to rebound well for that position. And I just like the structure of this roster. I didn't like it last year. I know I'm not just, jumping on the new bandwagon because I said it last summer. I did not like the way that the roster was constructed. I didn't like how slow they were going to have to be forced to play. And I really do like this construction of this roster. I think they've got a bunch of guys that'll spread the floor out and make it easier on everybody to go get their own shot and be able to produce and put numbers on the board. And that's what we're all looking forward to.
Absolutely. And in talking about Sam Alexis, the kid from Florida transfer, he is exactly what you're talking about. He's a guy that plays bigger than he is. He's got that higher than average rebounding rate. He's a shot blocker. So he's going to be someone that can help out. He's going to be a help side defender. He's not your 5, but he's going to be a 4 that can come in and cause problems. But they're also looking at a guy like Texas Tech center Federico. He's a big old 6'11" guy that played in all 32 games, 6 starts for the Red Raiders. He averaged 5 points, 4 rebounds, and only 7 blocks a game, but he shot 75%. But he's a shot blocker. He's an offensive rebounder. That's probably the style of guy that I know they'd like to have and that they're talking to.
Yeah, and you definitely need those types of guys. One, because you need the fouls, you need the extra fouls, you need guys that can come in and get those rebounds and plug that. The Federico guy, I enjoyed watching him play. I thought he was productive in the time that he was there. I think he's a guy that will play in the NBA and be one of those, rebounding big 4 or 5 guys in the NBA. And so I think he's that type of player. And to add someone like that, definitely, I think I said it a week ago on your show, they were going to need to start plugging in rebounders and some bigger guys that can defend bigger guys. And, I think the offensive end, they're going to have 3 shooters on the floor almost all the time. And that's just the luxury we've not been able to say about Indiana in the past couple of years. Many years, actually. And so that's what's exciting to me. I think they're plugging in the right pieces. He's looking for the right pieces. He's not just adding the best player available. And I really am excited to see the structure and how this thing plays out at the end. I think the practices will be fun. I used to love going to watch IU practices because of how hard they competed and played and all that. And I'm not picking on anybody or trying to prove any point, but over the last several years, not just the last 4 or 5 years, the last several years, the practices just haven't been that way. And I think we're getting ready to get back to that.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's going to be very equally matched. You're going to have guys that are just out there fighting each other for time, for minutes, because there are going to be so many that could play it. There are going to be multiple guys that could play the 2, the 3, or the 4, I think.
Yeah, there are.
And that is a great luxury. It allows you to force some teams or allows you to impose your will on some teams because forcing them to match up to you. My question is, though, what happens when they play a team, and I'll use Purdue as an example, who they're pretty set on how they run their offense. They always got a big, usually, that you're going to have to contend with. If you have a setup like Indiana is probably going to have, how do you combat that traditional big?
Well, and we talk about this every year when we're like game planning, when it's the week of the IU Purdue game, and we're talking about it. And we know how Purdue, it's obvious how Purdue, practices and works to defend other teams. And when they do that, they double team a lot in the post, almost exclusively. They will double team. Sometimes it's just on the dribble, sometimes it's on the catch, but they scheme for that. And that's what I think we're going to see a lot more of out of Indiana. They're going to scheme for things. There'll be times when they have to double team the post. You got to go get the ball out of Trey Kaufman-Wren's hands. You got to go get the ball out of Braden Smith's hands, and they'll double team and get that ball out of the hands of the guys they don't want to have it. And I don't think we're going to be in that situation where you've got an Omar Ballo or a Malik Renew or a Trace Jackson Davis where you say, hey, one-on-one, you go guard Trey Kaufman-Wren and you're going to stop him by yourself. We're not going to come help off of everybody else. And I think we're going to see a different philosophy from Indiana, and they'll scheme to guard guys differently as a team versus the one-on-one matchups I think Indiana's become accustomed to playing defensively for the last 4 seasons.
Well, and how I'll tell you what, I'll go ahead and hit a break because we've got to do that because there's plenty more to talk about. When we come back, I'm going to ask you, how much of a departure is this going to be next season for Indiana fans? And a positive one, I think, something that they have not seen in a decade. But we'll talk about that and all much more as we're coming to you from the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios. And remember, for those of you out looking for a new home in the Indianapolis area especially, our good friend Cheryl Sizemore, one of our great supporters, she's she was supposed to be out working on a Habitat for Humanity home today. It's an all-women's thing that they're doing. Congratulations to them up in Martinsville. I think they got rained out today, but they'll be back. But that's the kind of person she is, in addition to being the greatest realtor around. Reach out to Cheryl. Cheryl Sizemore sells at gmail.com. Todd Leary's with us. Welcome back to the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios on this Friday, joined by the shot father, Todd Leary from myjumpshot.com. Make sure you go there if you have kids. No kids, doesn't matter. It could be you looking to improve your basketball fundamentals or just athletics overall. Man, next season is going to be almost as big a departure from what IU fans have seen as what last season was for football. I'm not going to put it on that same category because of how far IU football went, but it's going to be, it may not be a 180, but it's going to be a 145 or something. It's going to be a drastic change.
Yeah, it is. It's going to be a change in style, in everything you would expect when you get a new coach in, and with the way things are now with the portal, basically a new roster, and that is exciting. Like I am excited to be able to see these guys come in and see them develop. That's the one thing. Or not the one thing. There's been several things, but that is one thing that over the years I think has frustrated me, in that I've not seen the guys improve individually. I've not seen the team camaraderie build and guys play well together. I think last year they started to a little bit. So I don't want to say it's unfair for me to say that because as a fan,
not really. That's been pretty much the case.
It has, but I do think that we will be able to say, and I think we'll be able to say it not just this year, but in years to come, that Indiana teams will get better as the season goes on. You'll see a big difference between these teams in November than what you see in February and March. And if you go back and study Coach DeVries and look at his teams over the years, they have definitely gotten better and been a team to deal with once the postseason comes along, and they play well together. And that is something that I am excited to see. This offseason for me is more exciting than the past several, because I do think we have that to look forward to. And I'm excited about that.
And there have been just massive changes. Everything has changed. Basically, everybody is gone. And that includes some people that I didn't really expect to be gone, like Jordan Hulls and maybe Calvert. We haven't heard for sure, but it doesn't look like right now, at least not on staff, that's not good to take place. And normally I would say, but is it really just? And I know you're friends with Calvert, and Jordan. I know Jordan as well. But is it a good thing that they're just getting rid of everything, and even when you don't have anything to do with the negative part, there's still everything has got to go to just cleanse the program, because it kind of has needed cleansing for a while.
Yeah, that part of it I definitely agree with. And I even said it last year, like it's going to be unfortunate because of some collateral damage, but I think everything from the Bob Knight era and all of that, as successful as it was and as awesome and what it built for the institution, putting it in blue blood status. But I do think it's a good thing that they're basically have cleaned house and started over. And I'll say this, I don't necessarily, whether it happens this year or not, it doesn't look like it, like you said, but I don't think you'd be opposed to bringing a Jordan Hulls back in a year from now. And if it does, it may still happen this year. I'm not sure, but I don't think that he's necessarily opposed to having Indiana, former Indiana guys around. I think they need to come in and just build their own thing, though. I don't disagree with that. And I like, I don't, the one part of it that I will say, and where a Jordan Hulls, I think, brings huge value, and Calvert and their names, is the recruiting in the state of Indiana. And to be able to go, Coach DeVries can get in front of any high school coach right now. But Jordan Hulls probably knows a couple dozen coaches already. And if not, right, they definitely know him. And
because he probably beat their ass when he was in high school.
100%. And right now you've got guys coaching in high schools across the state that their dads or grandpas or uncles or whatever probably coached in those same communities. They're familiar with the names, but I'm also not saying it's mandatory.
People forget his grandfather was on Bob Knight's first staff in Bloomington.
Yeah. And so, that trickles down, and I think that they'll, I think including the Adams
family.
I was going to say that, and I realized I better not. But you are basically adding the family. I mean, his dad's still a huge tie to the Indiana Elite program, and that just having those ties is big. And so I don't think it's having someone on the staff right away. As a former player, I'm going to tell you, I don't think it's as huge a deal. I think that they will make the connections. We've already seen Coach DeVries at high school, watching Trent Sicily play up at HSE. He was on the phone the whole time. He's talking to coaches all over the place. He's not going to have any trouble making those connections and getting in the door. And as long as he's doing that, look, I think we would all agree he's going to put the work in. He's proving right now he's going to put the work in, just like Coach Signetti. So, yeah, that comparison is allowed to be made like that. And we hope it just comes out, fractionally as good as that one did for Signetti.
Yeah, no, and you are exactly right. He's bringing in the guys that he is already familiar with, that he has confidence in, that can do the job that he needs done. That doesn't necessarily, you don't need a tie to IU to especially in today's age.
Right.
It's almost pointless, as a matter of fact, because your roster is going to see so much turnover year in and year out, and 80% of those guys are probably going to have zero connection to the state of Indiana because of the transitory nature now of it. which, good or bad.
And, Brian Walsh was a guy who put in an enormous amount of time.
He worked his butt off.
Made huge connections across the state from a high school level and all that. And he wasn't an Indiana guy. He's from Ohio and played in Ohio. And so it doesn't have to be an Indiana guy. It's got to be a guy that's willing to work hard. And that, to me, is what we have. And he said it from day one. In that opening press conference with Coach DeVries, you heard him say he has to act in some ways as a CEO. He's got to empower guys underneath him to go work hard and do their jobs and bring in guys. And I think that we're seeing him do that. And that's a great thing. And I wasn't disappointed when they hired an IU guy and Mike Woodson, 4 years ago. I also am not disappointed that they don't have an IU guy on staff right now. I think that it's in good hands, and I trust the work hard thing. To me, solves it all. And when you work hard, good things happen in basketball, and this guy works hard, and that will trickle down. He won't allow it to not trickle down. And as long as we see these guys practice hard, play hard, good things will happen.
He's not here to collect a check.
Yeah, he's not. This is not.
You can tell that.
This is not a short-term deal. This is not a retirement gig. This is not I'm getting paid back for everything I did for the school. This is not any of that. And I'm not saying that that's what it was in the past. But this is a destination job. Coach DeVries, I think if you asked him right now, hopes he retires when he is 70 years old as the Indiana Hoosiers all-time winningest coach. And he's got a lot of years to put in for that. And I think we're thankful for that.
Coach Cignetti will have that honor, more than likely. And the reason I bring him up is because I look at him, and 2 years ago, I think he was making about $600,000 a year. That would be great for you and me, but if you know what he's making now,
in that world, yeah.
In that world,
that's
more than 10 times that. He's making $10 million a year, but he's coaching the same way. Nothing has changed. And he is just as methodical, and I'm bringing that up because it's the same with Darian DeVries. It doesn't matter where you go. You are who you are if that's who you are. If you're driven to win, you know what it takes to win, and you know the effort that it takes to put in to get that accomplished. He's one of those guys. I agree with you.
Yeah, and when you have someone that's known Coach Cignetti for a long time or worked around him, when they describe him, and it's been multiple people, what they talk about is how hard he works. And I've heard some of the exact same comments about Coach DeVries, and he's a basketball guy, and that's what we've wanted. Just because you've been around it your whole life, doesn't make you necessarily a basketball guy. When you commit your life to it and it's what you eat, drink, and sleep every day, and that's what Coach DeVries is, that rubs off on people. And we're not going to have to worry about not working hard and letting guys not be accountable for their actions and how they work and play. And I couldn't be more excited about that.
I'm a little surprised that by now we have not heard a third assistant named. And I don't know if that's just because they're going through the process, if that person is actively working. Drew Adams doesn't look like he's going to be a quote assistant. His role, I don't know what his role is officially going to be, since he hasn't been announced as that per se. I don't know if he's going to be like a GM type or whatever, but there's still that open, at least one open spot for them to fill.
Yeah. And I don't think, unless we're inside his head and we're in that inner circle, I don't think we're going to know exactly what the plan is for that. If they've got 3 or 4 guys in mind, if they have no one in mind, if they're leaving it open to see what happens over the summer. Like I said, having a connection to the state of Indiana and recruiting and all that's awesome. Adams brings you that. And that's great. But, it doesn't have to be Indiana as well. Maybe there's an AAU guy out there or maybe there's a connection to, we had that Montverde kind of cycle coming through Indiana.
Maybe that changes to Spire Academy, which is where Kevin Boyle went to.
Exactly. And it may change to somewhere else. I mean, Coach DeVries might have another angle and another contact out there. And that's the stuff that's the inner stuff we probably won't find out or know. But I trust the process. I trust that they're going to work hard. And I know I'm beating a dead horse, but I'm just telling you, like, that solves a lot of it for me. When you've got a guy that I know is going to work hard, I'll support it no matter what. And even if they're not successful in year one, I'll support it if I know they're working hard. And I just can't say that it's been the case that way. Like, there's a lot of games last year I felt like I worked harder than some of the guys.
You worked harder recruiting last year without recruiting. Just by having a conversation or a comment, it's there's no point in getting in all that. It's all that's water under the bridge, man. Water under the bridge. I let myself get sucked into that. What's up next for you, brother? A weekend is here. I don't know how the weather's going to be, a little iffy, but
yeah, it's going to be warm. I'll take that part of it. Hopefully get some golf in.
Not really. It's going to be 63 tomorrow, dude.
63. That's golfable.
Were you back in Florida again?
Nope. I'm right here.
I'm 82 on Monday.
I'm right here in the pouring rain today because it is coming down already.
Where will you be playing? Are you playing this weekend?
Probably at the point.
Eagle Point.
Yep.
Oh well, are you playing with your normal morning guys?
Yep.
All right.
They've already. Once it got above 40, they started playing. I just don't start till it's like 60.
And these guys get after it. Enjoy it, brother. The Shot Father, Todd Leary, joining us as he does each and every Friday. Thank you, my friend.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
Absolutely. We've got more coming up from the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios. Hello, everyone. Jim Coyle with Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Thank you, as always, for listening to our content. But for more in-depth coverage on the Indiana Hoosiers football, basketball, and recruiting news, go to thehoosier.com on 3. Now with On 3 and great national writers like Ari Wasserman, Andy Staples, and Steve Wiltfong for football, Pete Nakos, J.B. Shaw, and Joe Tipton's constantly breaking stories on the basketball side. And the local coverage from Alec Lasley, Kyler Staley, and Zach Browning. You can catch something new every day at thehoosier.com. Go there. Sign up today.